Oversoul Edict is the new arc pulse rifle from Crota's End. Originally, I wasn't super excited for this weapon. I used to love pulse rifles in PvE, but I feel like they're a bit outclassed by other primaries right now. And I figured that Oversoul Edict would be the exact same. With the role I'm going over in this video, I honestly think it might be my new favorite voltshot weapon, especially to pair with arc exotics like Fallen Sunstar, Crown of Tempests, and Vesper of Radius. Oversoul Edict obviously rolls with voltshot, which is still one of the best perks in the entire game in my opinion, offering an insanely large ad clear radius and also offering increased damage on any enemy that we apply Jolt to, which also happens to make it perfect for pairing with the best arc builds in the game, because we can pair Jolt effects with our aspects, fragments, and abilities, while also using it to stun champions. Of the voltshot primary weapons in the game right now, the Ikelos SMG is great. I love 900 and 750 RPM SMGs, but the reload speed is pretty bad, and you only get better reload with Feeding Frenzy, which falls off pretty quickly, or Threat Detector, which requires you to be near enemies. Nation of Beasts is great, but I still feel like legendary hand cannons aren't the strongest weapons while under power, and assuming you do apply Jolt, it's going to be harder to trigger with non-full auto weapons to get that increased damage. Brigand's Lull is great, but sidearms obviously have some downsides with their range and accuracy, and then Tarnished Metal is also great, but usually I always feel like it isn't the best go-to weapon with voltshot. Explosive Payload tends to always feel better on scouts. I think either way you look at it, right now, the voltshot options we have always tend to come with a slight downside. I know there are some other weapons that I didn't mention, but as you can see in the background gameplay with Oversoul Edict and the role I'm covering in this video, we have extremely good reload speed, which is super important for voltshot weapons. We can also spam the weapon to trigger voltshot detonations on tankier enemies, which is also super important, and the weapon's going to work at most ranges, so there aren't too many downsides. I will be going over all the possible roles that you guys can choose from and put together in a second here, but just in case all you care about is the 5 out of 5 God roll that I recommend for PvE, first and foremost, make sure you have a range masterwork. After that, I went with Hammerforged Rifling. This just gives plus 10 range. There's no downside to running this. After that, I chose high caliber rounds. The main reason is we get that increased flinch in PvE. This does give another 5 range. As you're seeing, if I take it off, it goes down by 5. So you do get 5 range here, but this is mostly for the flinch. And then for the main 2 perks, I have Enlightened Action for that increased reload speed and handling, and then obviously Voltshot to pair with arc builds. With the crafted God roll now out of the way, we're over in D2 Foundry. I just wanted to show off the rest of the perk pool for the weapon in case you guys do opt for a slightly different roll yourself. And the main reason we're using D2 Foundry, and I love this site, is because I can apply something like Enlightened Action, and then I can scale this up to however many stacks I'm using. So in the case of like a pulse rifle that shoots 3 times, after a pulse, we're going to be sitting at around plus 30 handling and plus 30 reload speed. If you shoot a second time, you're going to be capped out at plus 50 for both. So this is extremely useful in getting your perfect roll together, because we can see how this is going to affect our stats in real time and what we're going to need versus not need in terms of our first and second column perks and then our masterwork as well. I want to start in the final column and then work our way backwards so that you guys can understand why I made specific choices for the weapon. Obviously, I do recommend Voltshot. Sword Logic could be good. You're primarily killing red bars and orange bars with the primary. In underpowered content, that's much more heavily geared towards just those red bars. So you're really just sitting at around a 15% damage increase. And then something like Adrenaline Junkie could be good. You do have your grenade up really often when using arc with this build and with the role that I'm using. But I don't think the 33% damage increase for only like 4.5 seconds is really that worth it. I think your stacks are going to fall off in a lot of situations, especially in harder content. I did want to pair Voltshot with Demolitionist because I wanted to use this on Warlock and spam grenades. The downside, when on Arc, especially with like Fallen Sunstar or even Crown of Tempest, you have a ton of regen for your abilities as is. So the demo on top of this doesn't really add much to the build. And then more importantly, with Voltshot, if you get that kill and then try and reload with a grenade, it doesn't actually give the jolt effect to the weapon. So it doesn't synergize at all. With Voltshot, obviously you want high reload speed on the weapon that you're using because you can get a kill, reload really quickly, get a kill with Voltshot, and then keep chaining it back and forth as you keep getting reloads in after each kill. The downside to this weapon is that it has 34 reload at base, which is terrible. So for that reason, if we can't use something like Demo to bypass our reloads, we need increased reload speed. And in my opinion, Enlightened Action is the best way to do this. So basically with just voltshot and enlightened action, the weapon already feels insanely good. And in my opinion, the only other thing that you can really add to this weapon, because it's already pretty stable, is your range stats. So for that reason, high cal rounds is +5 range. And more importantly, we do get that flinch on the red bar enemy types. And then after that, I went with hammer forged. This is +10. You could go with something like full bore, but this does have obviously stability and handling negatives. So I just use hammer forge for +10 and no other downside. And then after that, that is the main reason that I went with a range masterwork. So we can get all the way up to 52 and the weapon feels insanely good. So the other thing that I didn't mention yet that pairs really well with Oversoul Edict is obviously the Cursed Thrall origin trait. With this, on any of the Crota's End weapons, anytime we get a melee final blow, the weapon kills after that will now start triggering Cursed Thrall explosions for a short period of time. The sources I've checked say that it only lasts for 7.5 seconds, but every single time I've used it, whether it's a base melee that I get a kill with or a charged melee ability, I got the trait for a full 15 seconds, which is a pretty large amount of time. When combined with voltshot, not only are you dealing really good AoE and then obviously increased damage, but then the kills with that proc also trigger that Cursed Thrall explosion, which is going to be even more damage on top of that, which has a 4.5 meter radius, which is also pretty good. The best part is, when on Fallen Sunstar, we get our melee ability back extremely quickly through the Ionic Traces, and it's ranged while also dealing extremely good damage even when under power, which is usually going to be enough to kill a red bar enemy. So depending on your setup, you're almost always able to maintain this origin trait while also maintaining voltshot. For this reason, even though I don't think it's better overall, a roll with Swashbuckler instead of voltshot could also be extremely good. The melee kill would trigger the origin trait, then you would sit at 33% increased damage for 4.5 seconds, and as long as you get a kill within that time, you can pretty easily maintain Swashbuckler ×5, and then obviously this could still have really solid uptime on Fallen Sunstar, plus I think it would make for a potentially better roll on other subclasses that have high melee uptime, like on Solar Hunter. Even though it is a 180 RPM hand cannon, I think Word of Crota could actually be extremely solid with a melee-based build and the Cursed Thrall origin traits. I want to try this out with Phantom Knives, so if you guys are interested in seeing a follow-up video this week, let me know in the comments down below, and if you think there is a better build to pair Word of Crota with, since it's a void weapon, also let me know that as well. Let me know your thoughts on Oversoul Edict and where you think it ranks compared to the other voltshot primary weapons. I personally think if we ever get a 900 RPM SMG with voltshot and enlightened action, it might be the best voltshot weapon we could potentially ever get. I do also stream almost every night over on my Twitch. We do a bunch of low man speedruns and other endgame PvE activities over there. A link to that is in the description down below if you guys want to check it out. As always, have a good one, guys. Peace.